Hey everyone, I'm Campbell from Wave Shaper, and today I'm going to show you how to use one of our mod kits to convert this P20SF planer. So this instructional video is also for the cordless version, which is the P18DSL and also the P20ST. So let's get right into it. Before we get started, make sure the planer is disconnected from any power supply. I've done that already, so first step is disassembly. Luckily for these ones here, there isn't too much to disassemble, pretty much just the front shoe. And to do that, just turn the knob anti-clockwise until it disconnects. Just like that. And remove the front shoe. And so now you've got a spring here which you can place to one side, and then a washer as well. This foam dust shield won't get reused. You can keep that as a spare if you'd like, but all these components over there will not have to be used again, so you can just do with them what you'd like. Now the front shoe, we will need to drill this threaded rod out, and to do that you will need a drill press with a 12mm bit to drill through this hole through here. So I'm going to do that out the back now, and you can see that process. Our front shoe is fresh off the drill press. I've also obviously cleaned it, and I've sanded the chamfer groove with 80 grit sandpaper. So now we can flip it over and place our jig over the top to create the outline at the front. So just grab yourself a permanent marker, make sure it's square and lined up, and then just mark the outline. Alrighty, so now we can prep the front shoe to fill in the drilled hole and the chamfer groove with some JB Weld. So first step is to block off the main hole through here. So grab yourself some masking tape. So now I'll just prep the top part. So easiest way to trim the excess is just grab a razor blade and trace the hole. That way you get a nice clean edge. Alrighty, so we've got it all prepped. I did also clean it with IPA before I started, so that's all clean and ready to go. So I'll just mix up some JB Weld and then I'll fill this in. Okay, so I'm going to let that cure for a little bit, let it firm up. I'll then grab a razor blade and then I'll just remove the excess. I've let the JB Weld cure for a number of hours, so it's now ready for us to shape the front part of the shoe that we outlined earlier. The easiest way to do this is with a bench disc sander. If you don't have that, you can use an angle grinder with a flap disc. Obviously you want to leave yourself a bit more margin for error. Me personally, I remove the bulk with a bench disc sander, and then that's easier to clean it up as well. One last thing, make sure the JB weld is flush for the base of this, otherwise the depth control won't work properly. So if there's a little bit of excess, make sure you sand that flat and it's below the height of the metal part at the bottom. So make sure that that's taken care of. Once I've done the curve at the front, I will also round the edges as well. Our front shoe is taking shape, so you can see I've sanded the JB weld. I've also created the front curve and then rounded all the edges. So what we need to do now is just test fit this front shoe into the housing. So just tilt the planer on its side and then insert the front shoe. Now this fitment is perfect. Sometimes these can be a little bit tight, so you would just need to lightly sand the outside diameter of this with 400 grit sandpaper, just to loosen it up a little. You don't want to sand this too much because then it will become too sloppy in the planer. But this right here is pretty much spot on. So moderate resistance in there and it goes all the way up. So luckily I don't need to do any sanding, so we can move on. We do need to add just a little bit of JB weld on this left-hand side corner. And the reason why we do that is to eliminate or minimize the side-to-side play when the front shoe is in the housing. So to show you that, you can see here that it tilts from side to side ever so slightly. So by adding a little bit of JB weld only on this side here, you can help correct that. We don't need to do the other side due to the design of the housing through here. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly mix up some JB weld and then place a small dot on that. Our JB weld has cured, and I've also sanded this so that the front shoe fits back into the housing. If you leave too much material on here, it will be too stiff and the depth control won't work properly. So there's a happy medium. So I'll show you how that works now. So you can see when the front shoe is now inserted, the side-to-side play is very minimal. So you won't be able to eliminate this completely, but you'll definitely be able to make it a lot better. So I've just got my bottom part of my depth control out of the plastic bag along with my cover that sits over the top like this. And so now we just need to test fit this into the front shoe. Now this is a very important step. If this isn't done properly, then the depth control won't work as designed. So grab the bottom part of your depth control here and just place that in to the front shoe. Now for it to work properly, this needs to be pushed all the way down to the bottom. And so to check that, just simply look down there and see if there's a gap. So I can see this one here isn't getting down all the way to the bottom. So to fix that, I'll need to sand the inside diameter of this front shoe a little bit and then retest this again. The dimensions inside here are all slightly different depending on your front shoe. So sometimes you can test fit this and you won't need to do any sanding, sometimes you will. I've also seen some where they have sort of half circles every 90 degrees apart that are raised a little bit. You would need to remove those as well, but that's not a big issue. So I'm going to quickly sand the inside of this a little bit and then I'm going to test fit this again. That's now fitting really nicely into the front shoe. I can see that it's going all the way down to the bottom and I can lift this up and down. I can feel it's not catching on any sides or anything like that. I did actually have a Dremel out the back with a sanding bit as well, which makes this a little bit easier if you have that, but you don't need to. So with that now fitting really nice, we'll move our attention to the dust cover. So as I said, the inner diameter of these are all going to be slightly different, so you might need to sand yours a little bit. This one here was a bit of a tighter fit, so I did grab some sandpaper and sand the outside diameter. As for how this should fit, you don't want this to be very hard to be pushed in, but you do want some light resistance, so you don't want it just to fall right into place. So this right here is perfect. So there's light resistance when I push it in, and once you do that, this should sit flush with the top part of the front shoe. The O-ring will be slightly raised though. So that's all looking really good. So I'll go ahead and remove these. And now we can get ready to glue our depth control into the front shoe. Everything's now prepped. I've sanded the inside diameter here with some 80 grit sandpaper, and I've made sure there's no raised bits of metal or JB weld at the base. The depth control has also been sanded, the outside part here, with some 80 grit sandpaper, and a dry lubricant has been applied to the inner workings. Don't use a wet lubricant like grease, so dry lubricant is what you want to use. PTFE spray would be fine. The front shoe inside here has also been cleaned with IPA, and same with the OD of the depth control, just to make sure that you get a nice clean surface for when you apply the JB weld. So what I'll do is I'll put on some gloves, and then we'll glue this into the front shoe. When applying the JB weld, if you push it away from you, this will stop the depth control from coming apart. So just do this until you have a uniform coat all the way around. You don't need to do this too thick, just a nice uniform coat that covers all the areas. So you want to make sure that you line it up. And press all the way down. So it's also important that you hold the depth control in the most anti-clockwise position and then push all the way down nice and firm until it hits the bottom. So what we'll need to do now is to make sure that this is glued in perpendicular and not on an angle. So just look down to the front shoe and make sure that that's nice and straight on all the angles. So that's perfect. Don't worry about this excess at the moment. So what we'll do is wait for it to firm up a little bit, and then you can easily remove that with a food skewer or a very small flathead screwdriver. To install the cover, which is the one with the O-ring, grab also the install tool, which looks like this. Now this has been sanded with some 80 grit sandpaper and also has been cleaned with IPA, so it's a clean surface from when we put a little bit of JB weld on that. Just hold the cover like this and then just place a small amount of JB weld with your finger around the circumference. So the coat doesn't have to be very thick, just make sure that it's all the way around. So just gently place the cover over the top. Grab your tool, face it this way down, and it will just slide over the top, and then just use that to push all the way down. So we do have a little bit of JB Weld left, which can just be cleaned up, but you want to make sure that this is pressed nice and hard down to the bottom and it can't move anymore. So telltale sign is that the cover will be in line with the top part of the front shoe. So I'm just going to grab some paper towel and clean up the excess. So wait for that to dry. In the meantime, don't turn this top part, just let it sit and dry. We're now ready to put the front shoe back into the planer. I have already drilled this hole with a 13mm drill bit, so it accepts this slightly thicker part, and just make sure there's no burrs or sharp edges underneath. I also quickly want to talk about blades. So a lot of the time the planers come from the factory with the blades not calibrated properly, so I would highly recommend that you readjust those. What you're looking for is essentially the blades to be at the same height as the rear base and also even from side to side. So I've already done that on this one, so I know I can move forward. So just grab your upgraded foam dust shield and the two rounded corners face outwards like this. We now have our spacers over here. Now these are important so that we can index the front shoe to the height of the rear base. So just start with something in the middle, like a 12, and then just place that smooth side facing up. Just place that inside the planer and make sure this threaded rod is turned in the most anti-clockwise position. Just grab the shaft collar washer, smooth side down, the shaft collar itself, and just screw this down so everything stays together. Tilt the planer on its side, grab a straight edge or a ruler and just place that along the length of the planer. So right now I can see that I have a gap under my rear base, which is telling me my front shoe is sitting too low, so I'll need to try a thinner washer. If it's the other way around where you have a gap under your front shoe, then you need to try a thicker washer. What we're trying to achieve is to make sure that the front shoe and the rear base are all at the same level. I've already done that calibration off camera and I know that I need a number 7 spacer, so I'll go ahead and install that. Make sure that the threaded rod is turned in the most anti-clockwise position. Grab your washer, smooth side down, and then your shaft collar. Now if you plan on using the ball and stem, now's the time to adjust that. So grab the longest rod and just screw on the ball at the end, and then screw that into the shaft collar. Grab your nut and screw this down. Now if you like a bit of a firmer feel on the depth control as you're turning it, you can screw this nut down a little bit tighter. To start, I would recommend you just screw it down so it just touches the shaft collar, but you can play around with that and see what you prefer. Now that that's in position, we can then now locate where we want our ball and stem. Most of the time for a zero cut, people have it on the left-hand side corner, so I'll just place that there. So grab yourself a 9/64 hex wrench and then tighten down. Just remove the nut. And then screw on the knob. So you don't need to do this too tight, just enough so it's snug. Now, some shapers might want extra clearance between the blades and the foam. If that's the case, you just need to select a slightly thicker washer. We now just need to remove our kickstand and then install our dust adapter and elbow. The conversion is now done, so it's ready to mow some foam. If you've decided to use the ball and stem, you'll just need to glue that in with a little bit of JB Weld. And thanks for watching.